Who could have thought that jumping off a cliff could have a more intricate motive other than a suicidal tendency? In Song of Solomon, Toni Morrison introduces the theme of flight, wherein many of the characters try to seek freedom and subsequently seek flight. Ultimately, the book suggests that in order to achieve flight or freedom, one must forgo one's societal restrictions and engulf oneself in their family's past. Milkman goes through a process of epiphany wherein he develops an ideology that would control most of his life. As a child, Milkman learned that only birds and airplanes could fly, and consequently lost interest in himself. To not fly would be to be imprisoned. Although Milkman has spent most of his life living a spoiled life, he has concluded that nothing he wanted was part of it. Milkman has lived a life full of contradictions, where everyone who has used him was doing so for a personal motive. The same man who used him for profits was also the same man who wanted to end his life. The mother who used him to give meaning to herself is synonymous to Milkman as being sinful and secretive, and Hagar, the one that claimed to have loved him, was also the one who wanted to relieve him of life. In essence, everyone who has used him has also hurt him. In response to being used, Milkman developed a mindset in which he only thinks of himself, further alluded to in his conversation with Guitar, in which he does not understand doing something other than for himself. This trait could be attributed to Milkman's conflicted feelings of being used and trying to follow the norm. To elucidate, Milkman wants to use others for his own personal gain because others have used him. This phenomenon is widely studied in the field of psychoanalytical theory and defined as crowd behavior or convergence theory, wherein one copies what one sees, especially as a child. This could be shown in his relationship with Hagar, in which he only thinks of himself and disregards any of Hagar's feelings. Retracing to the beginning of the book, in which Pilat sings Solomon Don't Fly, we are introduced to the concept of flight, a monumental motive within the story. Even though one might perceive Smith's attempt to fly as suicidal, it is strongly alluded to be provoked by his desire to distance himself from the remnants of slavery, hence his desire for freedom. Flight is freedom. This concept is further illustrated in Milkman, wherein he wants to be free from others and take flight. To take flight would be to be free from others. No longer would he be used by others, and no longer shall he be the subject of controversy, but instead be on his own journey that he himself has paved, not constrained by his family's past. Milkman, the one who sought to distance himself from his family, would ironically be the same man who would seek flight with respect to his ancestors. Pilat, the woman whom Milkman greatly respected, had traveled abroad and came to terms with herself, and was thus able to take flight without leaving the ground, as she reconciled with the death of her father, a great contrast to Macon Jr., who saw freedom through wealth in retaliation of his father's death. In the final chapters, in which Pilat is shot, we are given hindsight into Pilat and Milkman's intricate relationship, when the latter had admired the way Pilat was able to give meaning to herself and find freedom, as she was not constrained by societal norms such as wealth or class, which is where Milkman had long been searching. Although different characters viewed flight differently, as evidence of Macon Jr. seeking freedom through wealth, or Smith, which is that of a loveless man with a delusion of flight, a delusion he knew would fail because he asked for forgiveness in a note attached to the front door of his little yellow house. Milkman's flight, however, is a heroic one, motivated by inner liberty and fulfillment based on finding what is real and meaningful, and in a flight in which he believes he is vindicating Pilat's death while subduing his adversary, Guitar. I could thus conclude that although generic, Milkman has found the meaning he was looking for, freedom from societal norms, as he will not follow in his precedent's footsteps, but instead make his own way that he saw just.